he was 86, and every time that at least we saw or heard from him in, I'd say, over the last decade or so, boy, it sure seemed and felt like he was having the time of his life. And so maybe that makes the news over the weekend a little bit easier to stomach. The great Nelly, Don Nelson, passes away at 86, and one of the first people we wanted to talk to was, the man who was alongside with him in multiple stops around the NBA, the former GM of the Warriors, joining us now, Willard and Dibs here on the River Islands guest line, is none other than Larry Riley. Hey, Larry, what's going on today?
Well, I'm just like you. I'm reflecting on, the greatness of Don Nelson, and of course there's sadness associated with it, but I think you hit the nail on the head. We should be happy that he had the time of his life, right, the last several years, and of course had a tremendous career. Everything's documented there.
No doubt, and I can't help but go back to, 2009 when you guys drafted Steph Curry, and Mark and I were just joking during the break about what the internet says as far as who gets the credit or how that all went. But can you take us back to the drafting of Steph Curry? Was it your idea? You had to convince Nelly, or likewise, or what was that process like?
It's not a glorious story, so to speak. The media, of course, wants to have some flamboyant thing going on or some argument or something. There was never anything like that. I went out and I scouted Steph, and our staff scouted Steph. We went through the natural process. We had him ranked as the number 2 player in that draft, and of course, he went 7, I guess, as far as that goes. But at the same time, I had sent Nelly the tapes and so forth for him to take a look at, and I wasn't going to go through the draft and not at least talk to the head coach and so forth. And so a lot of people make a big deal out of it, but he was our staff's guy. He was my guy, and Nelly he liked him, and so there was never any controversy, and everybody was in agreement, and there was no problem, and that's really the way it went down. Nelly never saw him play, and I sent him the tapes, and, was glad things worked out the way they did, and, I was told by ownership and by Robert Rowell, you make the pick, do what you want to do. Nelly had told me, he said, nobody will believe this, I don't want to be the GM. This is your job. And here we are, we're in agreement, which we were in agreement on a lot of things, and we disagreed on some others. But that pick was so simple because we were all in agreement with it.
Larry Riley is with us here on Willard and Dibs. And Larry, I don't know if anyone's ever said this to you, but you just shared with us that you had Steph Curry as the number 2 player back in the 2009 draft, and you were wrong. He absolutely was the number 1 player in that draft. So you totally messed that one up. Who'd you have ahead of him?
I was Blake Griffin.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
You're absolutely right. If we'd had the number 1 pick, I would have screwed it up. and I remember this, when we brought Steph to town and showed him to the public, so to speak, having him in his first appearance, I said, we had him as the number 2 pick, and he's going to set out to prove it. He's number 1. And by golly, he did it.
And I just want to go back to the moments before the pick. And, I know today's about Don Nelson, but I'm just fascinated by what took place, which is Minnesota's on the clock with back-to-back picks ahead of you. They need guards. Were you pretty certain that Steph Curry was going to go to Minnesota in one of those 2 picks?
No. And what had happened, we were so concerned that Steph would be picked even ahead of Minnesota. We had actually looked at trading the pick if Steph was not available. And there were quite a few conversations that had gone on in that regard because I just didn't see any way he could get to us. And the night before the draft, I got information that Minnesota was actually going to take the 2 guards that they took. Johnny Flynn, of course, won, and he was out of the league pretty quick, and then Ricky Rubio. And so I couldn't believe it, but that's the information I got, and it turned out that was exactly the way it went, and then here we are with Steph Curry.
We will owe Minnesota forever, Larry, absolutely. But yes,
no question.
Yeah, circling back, I just wonder if somebody asked you, hey, I heard Don Nelson passed away. What do you want to share with the public about that? Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind that you would want to tell people about working alongside with him?
Here's the thing. All of the accolades, his record and all that, that's obvious to everybody. But the person himself, I saw the loving side of him that probably a lot of people didn't see. And he cared about the people around him. Now, could he get crossways with somebody else? Yes, he could. I mean, but if somebody didn't like him, that didn't bother him. But when you worked hard, when you were with him, and you were somebody who was supportive, you had a great friend. And that was him. Now, we can talk all about basketball and about his intellect and the fact he was such a pioneer, but there was a caring side to him that probably some people don't know about.
Talk to me about the We Believe Warriors and just how he was the perfect guy for that roster when, you get Steven Jackson in and Baron Davis and Al Harrington and all the rest of it. What made that thing so symbiotic?
Well, see, what happened is the Warriors had put together some pretty good players, and I've never thought that Chris Mullin got enough credit for what he did with that team, because he and Rod Higgins were in the front office, and they had a little bit of a roster. Then they talked to us, Nellie and I, about training camp, adding Matt Barnes, and then they make the trade, as you just mentioned, that brings in Al Harrington and Steven Jackson. And Nellie, that was the perfect type of player that he needed, and he was able to take advantage of it, and he got that group, about our top 8 players. Boy, he got them in sync and got them to believe. And I mean, we had the We Believe team, and he didn't have anything to do with that because that came from outside. But he had the team believing, and he didn't have to work real hard about that because you had players who did have confidence. Steven Jackson was full of confidence, but he had Jay Rich. Jason Richardson was a confident player. So was Baron Davis, but Nellie brought the best out in them, and then strategically he prepared them for that series. And boy, we won the first game, and nobody on our team, whether it was the players or the coaches, nobody was surprised. I mean, that's where the confidence was, because we had come into that thing, and Nellie had worked with them, and he got us. I think we were 16-5 going down the stretch. And Nellie was just, he worked those games and really did I think that was maybe his finest coaching job, and he had a lot of them, but that moment, that time, one of the best in his career.
Larry, there are so many stories, and a lot of them coming directly from the players you're referencing right now, with regard to how Nellie was, and I mean a player's coach is probably saying it too mildly. The openness with which he handled the players, what he allowed all of them to do and be, both on and off the court. I'm curious, from someone like you who's been with Nellie for many years and at multiple stops, was it always that way? Or was that sort of something that Nellie just felt fit that group?
It was more that group. And I would say, now, of course, I didn't work with Nellie when he was a younger coach, so everybody matures. But I think he was a hardliner, much more so. And then when we got to, I joined Nellie in the year 2000. So at that time, I think he had not matured, that's not the right word, but I think he had seen the game where he could work with players maybe a little bit differently without being a hardliner, but he never lost the fact that he could come down on you pretty hard. And he did do that from time to time, but he also allowed some leeway for players. And I think that had a great deal to do with it. He knew how to manage that We Believe team and the characters that were on that team. He knew which buttons to press. And sometimes the team didn't know they believed in him, but they didn't know what he might come up with, and they had to be ready for anything. And that was him. He would do that. He'd come up with almost anything.
One of the things that he is credited with coming up with is the whole idea of a point forward, and now you look at Draymond Green and the career he's had as kind of that point forward. What was it like in those early days when Nelly was coming up with different things that nobody else in the league was doing?
Well, and you're exactly right. He did come up with a point forward thing. He once told me that he would love to coach a starting five, that all of them were 6'7", and they could all play different positions. You know, that was, he said it'll never happen, but that would be kind of fun. But see, he also, not only did he come up with a point forward concept where you could lift the forward out high and basically have him run as a point, but he was one of the first guys to really want to accelerate the game. Everybody talks about playing faster and so forth, and they give credit to a lot of other people, but he was one that he always wanted to play faster. He wanted the game to be fast and to get up and down the court.
Larry Riley with us on Willard and Dibs. Larry, it's funny you just said that. He would have loved 5 players all at 6'7" who could play all the positions, and what sort of bounced into my head is, you mean like basketball is now? I mean, you know, like what do you think Nelly would be, what would he do, for instance, with this Warrior group? What if he were coaching now?
Oh, he would be successful without question, and he would love it. He would love the way the game is now played. And he was one of those guys. The only thing I would say that is a little bit different is when it came crunch time, he always had a play in his hip pocket where he knew who to go to, who to get the ball to, and where to get him a shot. And, you know, he would never give that up. But otherwise, he would open up the floor, and he would be all about movement. And, you know, he'd be tremendously successful with the way this game is played.
And the game now, though, is a little bit different, obviously, than the old school where you wouldn't just throw yourself on the ground and try to draw a call from the officials. Is that something that you and even Nelly, when you look at the modern game, is that something that you see as kind of a scourge of the NBA?
It is. It is. It's something that most of us don't like to see, and I think the league doesn't like to see it. And so it's just something that's not part of the game. That's not the way the game was intended to be played. But people see a way that they might take some advantage, so they do it. But no, he wouldn't be into that. Now, if you wanted to take a charge and take a legitimate charge, he was all about that. And he would challenge players. You know, if you can't do anything else, if you get an opportunity to take the charge, yes. But he didn't like people flopping.
Larry, what comes to mind if I asked you, what was your favorite night alongside Nelly ever?
Game 6 against the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs.
Okay. So is that just a basketball answer, or what was your experience? Because we've listened earlier to some of the things that happened after the game. What was your experience?
No, after the game, yes, there was quite a party, but I'm talking about the game itself.
Okay. Where were you during that party, Larry?
Well, Nelly was up on the top floor of that building. What was that lake that was in Oakland? And he had
Lake Merritt. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And I was certainly at the party, no question, as well as about 35 or 40 other people.
You mentioned before that you guys win game 1 and you're not surprised and you kind of almost expected it. They won 67 games that year. What did you and Nelly and the whole staff see in Dallas that you knew you could take advantage of?
We felt like we had guard play that was better than what they had, and we felt like we could get some defense in the game and disrupt them a little bit. And that's exactly what happened. See, we had, Nelly and I had worked the zone defense quite a bit. And Nelly, he never coached zone very much. I coached a little zone in college, and the two of us got together and put together a 3-2 zone. We had it in our hip pocket, and we never pulled it out till game 6. but it was there in case we needed it. But overall, we thought we were better defensively to the point where we could slow them down. And then when we got to game 6, third quarter, we threw in that 3-2 zone. The defense was really great. The offense just exploded, and everything came together all at once. And have vivid memories of that. And didn't hurt any that Steven Jackson just knocked the dickens out of everybody with. I think he made 6 3-pointers in that second half.
Yep.
Yeah.
Larry, were you still in touch with Nelly? When was the last time you talked to him?
June.
Okay.
I had gone over to Dallas in June, and I'm so glad I did. We often talked about getting together more than we did, but I went in June, had an opportunity to be with him, and it's one of those things that, just as we go through life, if you have a chance, I don't care if it's your grandpa, your grandma, or a good friend, you get a chance to go visit them, go visit them. It comes, it's just a great thing to be able to do that. And I've known that, and it worked out for me and for Nelly this time.
Well, Larry, above all, condolences on the passing of your friend.
I'll tell you, he was such a special friend, and he was such a unique individual. There's nobody like him. I mean, I think everybody knows that. But, he was certainly a special friend, and I appreciate your condolence statement.
Well, we appreciate you coming on to talk about him today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day.
Yep, you too. There it is. Larry Riley, the former GM and obviously the counterpart alongside Nelly for many of the years with both the Warriors and the Mavericks.